Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast, and it's me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, and today we're breaking down the ranks for Week 12 for the wide receivers. That's right. Pat Fitzmaurice is here to join me to help out, as always, every Wednesday, and our number one ranker consensus from 2021 is back too. The champ is here, ladies and gentlemen. So bang the drum. Billy Muzio joins us. Obviously, you can follow him over on the Twitter machine at FFMuzio and check out all his work at Full Time Fantasy. He's a bit of a high-stakes legend as well. In case you didn't know, he's also a legend here because of Fantasy Pros, when you're number one, that really matters. So today we're going to jump right into it. And of course, as always, you can go to fantasypros.com/rankings to get all of the latest in terms of who's in, who's out, who's up, who's down. And when it comes to wide receivers, we're looking for some healthy bodies. Week 12, that's what we're looking for. And let's start with one that we hope, fingers crossed, is actually healthy now. We shall see. It's a hot button guy. It's Keenan Allen, one of the most traded guys on the Sleeper app in fantasy over the last week. So, Pat, you've got him ranked at wide receiver 21. I know, Billy, you've got him at 33. ECR's got him at 26, right in between. Pat, what are your thoughts on Keenan Allen? Is it safe to go out and love again?
I think it is. We saw him get in 44 snaps last week against the Chiefs, had 5 catches for 94 yards, including a gorgeous catch down the right sideline, laying out for a ball that was slightly overthrown, fully extended, coming down with it. So it was great to see him get that fairly full arsenal of snaps in. Like, that's an encouraging sign. Now he's going up against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals, man, I can't wait to see how this works out because they have been playing like hybrid safety, linebacker, cornerback, Isaiah Simmons. They've been having him cover slot receivers. Isaiah Simmons is almost 240 pounds. Like, is that guy going to be able to hang with a route running artiste like Keenan Allen? Man, I like Allen in that matchup a lot. So I'm pretty bullish on him, especially if Mike Williams is out this week after retweaking his high ankle sprain last week.
One can only assume that's the direction we're going. Now, Billy, I know your ranking right now at 33 of Keenan Allen kind of bakes in that you're starting him. It's just your expectation for him. So that being said, you're expecting more of a wide receiver 3 kind of performance. Maybe you see the same upside as Pat, but what do you think about Keenan Allen in this week in week 12?
I don't fully trust Keenan Allen. Last week he said that he was supposed to be on a snap count, and after Mike Williams exited with his ankle injury again, that he was forced into a larger role, and that forced role was 67% of snaps. He hasn't been healthy all year, let's face it. You know, that hamstring injury has been reoccurring. He's only seen 89 snaps all season. The plus side is he does get Arizona. He should be facing off versus Antonio Hamilton, who's 77th ranked to the cornerback position. I just don't trust the hamstring. I could be re-aggravated at any point. And I think that they're going to continue to lean on Josh Palmer. So I don't fully trust Keenan Allen yet.
If you had to choose between, let's say, Keenan Allen and somebody like Curtis Samuel, who's really threading the needle, but somehow does it every week, because of your concern with the hamstring, would you start Samuel or would you start Allen?
I would start Samuel.
Fascinating. There you go. All right, let's go to the next guy on the list here. Allen, I love no hesitation too. That's why I love Billy. You ask him a question, he's like, boom, there it is. Okay. No hemming, no hawing, just facts. Allen Robinson. I don't know if this is a fact or not, but Allen Robinson was relevant last week. Not last year. He wasn't relevant last year. Last week he was relevant. It's a short window. He did catch a touchdown in that game. We assume we're going to be without Matthew Stafford in this game. Now, Pat, you've got him as wide receiver 36. Billy's got him at 27. There's been an adjustment there. And then ECR still lagging behind when it comes to Allen Robinson, and rightfully so. He's been grossly disappointing. So this is sort of one of those rankings that's all over the place, but he is floating around as somebody you have to at least consider starting this week. I know we have a full slate of games, but Pat, what do you make of the situation here with Allen Robinson? The Rams offense continues to devolve every single week. No Darrell Henderson now. He was released earlier this week, and I see Allen Robinson now at wide receiver 41, the most updated ranking, so he's moved up a little bit. So what are your expectations, if any, for Robinson this week?
Boy, they're not that high, Joe, because we don't know who's going to play quarterback for the Rams. Matthew Stafford is back in the concussion protocol just 3 days after coming out of it. So the guess is that he is probably not going to play. We saw Bryce Perkins come in for him last week. It might be John Wolford. I think he was dealing with like a neck injury. We just don't know. But whoever it's going to be, it's probably not going to be pretty for the Rams passing game. And like, even with Stafford in there, Robinson has not seen more than 7 targets in a game all season or had more than 63 receiving yards. Like, yes, I guess he's the number 1 receiver in this offense, but I mean, in any given week, it could be Ben Skowronek, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, one of the running backs. Like, the chance of a ceiling game here is pretty slim. So I'm almost worried that I've got him too high at wide receiver 36 and might drop him before Sunday.
Billy, back-to-back weeks here for Robinson without Kupp. 4 for 44, 4 for 47. The only difference is he had a touchdown last week. So is that pretty much who he is? It's 4 for 47, and you're just hoping for a touchdown?
I think that's now the upside because they announced today Bryce Perkins is starting at quarterback. And I am not thrilled about that. 56% completion percentage on his 11 pass attempts in his career so far. Very raw. He was wide receiver 17 last week, but that was because of the touchdown. It was interesting enough to see his snaps were reduced actually versus his last 3 weeks versus last week. So he saw his 3-week average was 91%. He saw 82.8% last week in week 11. He was outsnapped by Ben Skowronek. It is a plus matchup against Kansas City, but I don't think it's going to matter with Perkins at quarterback.
No, probably not. Not against Kansas City, at least. That's for sure. All right, let's move on to the next guy, Skyy Moore. Speaking of Kansas City. So wide receiver 49, Pat, you've got him there. Billy's got him at wide receiver 67. ECR is still dragging behind because they're not exactly sure what to make of him. They have him in the 70s. But I want to talk about Moore because this is one of those players in those deeper leagues. You saw a little bit of productivity last week at him. 5 for 6 for 63. He had 9 half PPR points. He was wide receiver 36 last week. Tony likely out. Juju, we're still waiting on official word. So in a world where, let's say we don't get Juju this week or Juju's limited, is Skyy Moore somebody in a deeper league you can stream this week, in your opinion, Pat?
I think he is. And if Juju is out, then I would have Skyy Moore just inside the top 50. I've since tentatively moved him down to right around where Justin Watson is at wide receiver 55, I think. So yeah, I mean, Moore played 27 snaps last week, ran 16 routes, and it's pretty impressive that he was targeted on 6 of 16 routes. Kind of a small sample size, but that's 37.5% of his routes where the ball comes in his direction. And it's a ball coming from Patrick Mahomes, the hottest passer on the planet. So, Hardman is out. Kadarius Toney is almost surely going to be out, and Juju could be out. So at worst, Skyy Moore is going to be the wide receiver 4, playing behind Justin Watson. Possibly he jumps Watson based on his pretty productive week 11. And, it's possible he's either the number 2 or the number 3 this week. And we know the dude was talented. He was a second round draft pick, and there was talk this spring that he might be a first rounder. I think there's a good chance he passes up Watson on the depth chart, possibly as early this week. And he just showed us that he's capable of putting numbers up even with a snap share of less than 50%. So, in this offense with Patrick Mahomes as the facilitator, I think he is an interesting deep league play.
Billy, even if Tony and Juju were both somehow cleared, you have to imagine they're limited. Does that allow for Skyy Moore to work his way in, or is it a scenario where both those guys have to be out to even get him considered?
Both of them have to be out in order to be considered, I think.
See, again, no hesitation, Pat. You see this guy? I love it.
Pat and I are looking at things in a different lens on this perspective with Skyy Moore. Even with them out last week, Juju, Hardman, as well as Tony leaving early with the hamstring injury, he still only saw 41.5% of snaps. Justin Watson saw 87.7%. Now, I think there is a scenario where that bridge kind of, that gap closes. I don't think that he'll out-snap Watson, though. I think he's the clear favorite ahead of Skyy Moore. And I think it was interesting, a telling sign that they didn't fully trust Skyy Moore in his development when they went out and got Tony on top of it. So there is a scenario, though, where I think that he could produce in that, wide receiver 40, 50 range. I have him at 67. I think if they're both listed out, I'll have him where Pat has Watson in that 53, 54 range. Juju had that big hit. It was a nasty hit. So it's going to take a little bit longer than that 6 to 10 days, I think, for the concussion protocol. But if Juju passes, Skyy Moore is not even in my top 70, I don't think. And then if he does not clear, I think the game script, them getting ahead against this Perkins-led, Rams team would open up the gate for more Skyy Moore snaps. So there is a scenario or an out in which Skyy Moore does see that snap share. I just think it's going to take a lot to get there.
All right, let's talk about a guy who's coming off a pretty darn good week himself, and that's Joshua Palmer. Let's flip the script around here. Billy, you've got him at wide receiver 22. Pat's got him at 35. ECR's got him at 30. Billy, it's hard not to like what you saw last week out of Joshua Palmer, but again, with Keenan Allen potentially healthier, I know this kind of ties in the first guy we were talking about earlier, but if you're lower on Allen, does that mean that you are obviously higher on what Palmer can give you this week?
Yeah, what goes up must come down, right? And that for me is
Right.
Palmer. Again, I just don't fully trust Keenan Allen. I don't think we're going to see a full amount of snaps. I think we'll see more than 67, which is going to be a benefit to this offense. I think that'll also benefit Palmer. This is very news dependent on, Keenan Allen's health, very dependent upon Mike Williams, of course, as well, dependent upon Everett as well. So there's a lot of, determining factors that will eventually, move his ECR. But you got to like the snaps, 92.3% last week, averaging 10 targets a week since week 6. 2 100-yard games in that stretch. He should draw coverage from Marco Wilson, who was 43rd ranked cornerback in the league, but it also should be a shootout as well. So you look at the second high, I think it's the second highest over under the week, 47.5. The only game higher is the Bills-Detroit game at 54. And Arizona gives it the second most points per game in the league at 26.9 average. So I like the matchup. I like the shootout potential, and I like Palmer.
Pat, after a tough matchup there, San Fran, in between two really good games here for Palmer, 8 of 10 for 106 against Atlanta, 8 of 10 for 106 against Kansas City. So Palmer's basically balled out, except for, obviously, against San Fran, pretty good defense there. So do you think that Palmer deserves a little bit more respect, especially with the likelihood that Mike Williams will not be active for this game?
Well, Joe, here's the thing. I think Joshua Palmer stakeholders are going to understand what I'm talking about on this, because he's played 7 games that Keenan Allen did not play in this year. And in those 7 games, Palmer had 1 100-yard game and 1 touchdown, and he finished with under 60 yards in 5 of the 7. So, injuries to other Chargers receivers have not necessarily given Palmer a huge boost. I mean, he had 2 games where both Allen and Mike Williams were out. One of those games, 8 for 106, very nice. The other one, 3 for 43. So, those injuries have definitely not been a consistent windfall for Josh Palmer here. Now, I do like the matchup with Marco Wilson. I mean, I don't think he's going to see Wilson on every snap, but, no matter what Wilson is rated, that's a matchup I like for whatever wide receiver is going against him. So, Palmer is going to be an interesting guy. I think he's going to be the subject of a lot of start-sit dilemmas in Week 12.
Another guy, probably a lot of start-sit dilemma, Parris Campbell, who's been trending in the right direction the last few weeks with Matt Ryan back under center. Billy, you've got him as wide receiver 39. ECR is at 38 where you are. Pat is at 45. It seems to be a good trend. It seems to be a good matchup here. The secondary has not played well for Pittsburgh this year. You could throw the ball on them all day. So do you think Parris Campbell is somebody that people should be considering putting in their lineups?
Yeah, he's been sneaky good lately. Wide receiver 20 the last 3 weeks. Gets the Steelers, giving up the most fantasy points to wide receiver position, which is 42.68 fantasy points a game. That's a lot. Steelers have given up 2,025 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns on the season. He's going to face Arthur Mallett, 65th ranked cornerback. We saw him run a 86.6% route rate the last 3 weeks. Lot to like about Campbell. It's just a matter of trusting Matty Ice in this offense and how much they're going to use JT. So I think he's definitely in the flex-worthy consideration, but seeing there's no buys, you might have better options.
That's the key, right? We have more options, but also the trust is, again, the lowercase t, not the uppercase. So, Fitz, when you're looking here at Parris Campbell, what's your trust level?
Yeah, so over the last 4 weeks, he's wide receiver 36 in fantasy points per game among receivers with at least 2 games. So he's been, pretty good, not necessarily a slam dunk start. Stretch it out to 6 weeks, and he's been the wide receiver 18 in fantasy points per game if you, put that minimum games played threshold in there. I really do like the matchup against Arthur Mallett. He's averaged 1.59 yards per route into his coverage. That's pretty bad. But like with no buys, the four guys I have directly ahead of him are Deontay Johnson, Darnell Mooney, Treylon Burks, and Drake London. And like, I think you could almost argue for those five guys in any sort of order. Maybe Drake London gets a bump with Kyle Pitts out. Deontay Johnson, really disappointing this season, but he's obviously a really good player. Darnell Mooney, who knows what to expect, a guy who could make his fantasy quote on one play. Treylon Burks, do we buy the resurgence against the Packers last week? So I'd kind of put, Campbell into that basket with a season high of 76 yards and only 4 games with more than 43 yards. So yeah, he's on an uptick, but there's definitely some downside here too.
I call it the flip a coin range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It pretty much
feels like it. All right, let's go deeper here. Let's talk about Jarvis Landry. Guest, you've got him at wide receiver 51, Billy. Pat, you've got him at 58. ECR has actually got him at 48, which I thought was kind of interesting here as we're pushing through. And that obviously is, always slightly volatile. Yesterday it was 48. Today now it's 52 as I'm looking, as it has moved a bit. But it is a tough matchup here against San Fran. We know that. But also the tough matchup sometimes means we figure they're playing from behind. Now, obviously, the Arizona Cardinals were struggling in that they couldn't move the football, but there's been times here where you've seen Jarvis Landry, where you've seen, Chris Olave and this offense be able to answer back. Billy, do you think that Jarvis Landry this week in deeper leagues is somebody you can consider flexing, or is the matchup just completely take him out for you?
It was 2015, sure, not 2022. He's only played 6 games all year. Decreased snaps last week, even versus week 10 when he was first week active back. Saw 56.1% last week for 78.7. 238 yards all season, and 114 of those came week 1 versus Atlanta. So I'm not confident in Jarvis Landry. I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball that well versus the Niners. He only saw 59.4% route participation last week. The only plus side that I can think about with Jarvis Landry is that he did see 3 red zone targets last week. So
that was going to be where I was going.
He might catch a touchdown. And that's what
he did have take. One. You took the words right out of my mouth. That was going to be the setup. He had a touchdown and he had a few targets in the red zone. Is that enough to get you excited at all, Pat, in deeper leagues about Landry?
Not really, Joe. I'll be totally honest.
All right,
with you.
I tried.
The touchdown last week was the first positive thing he's done for fantasy since week 1 when he had 7 catches for 114 yards. 5 other games this season, his yardage totals have been 25, 22, 7, 37, and 33. So Olave is the alpha receiver there. They rotate in a bunch of other receivers. I can't even keep track of them in New Orleans with Callaway and Traquan and Kevin White coming, out of the fog.
Kevin White coming back.
Shaheed.
That was one I did not have on my bingo card in 2022. Yeah, I did not have that one.
They throw to Jawan Johnson. And oh, by the way, Taysom Hill had a season-high 24 snaps last week, and Hill playing quarterback is generally not a good thing for Saints wide receivers. So, I'm not really on board with Landry.
Okay. Before we get to a little throwdown action, I want to remind everybody that we have got a lot going on here at Fantasy Pros. We've also got the autopilot feature available on my playbook. So if you don't know what that is, I will tell you. If you have leagues where you've just said, this one's not going anywhere, but I want to still set lineups, I'm kind of busy, it's the holidays, well, autopilot is perfect because full autopilot basically turns on your optimal lineup for all of those leagues, so you could set it and forget it basically, still be a good league mate, still not be that pushover that lets somebody else walk into the playoffs because you didn't set a lineup or get the best lineup you could. And it allows you to come off smelling like roses. So go to fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the app, sync your teams for free. Go check out the autopilot feature and all of the features that we have. If you go to fantasypros.com/offers, all you have to do is make a small deposit in one of our partner sites. And just like that, you can upgrade to 6 free months of our Fantasy Pros tools, including autopilot, including setting all of your lineups from one spot. That's right. If you got 6 different teams on 6 different sites, you can set all those lineups in one spot over on Fantasy Pros My Playbook. So download the app or go to fantasypros.com/myplaybook today and use the features like autopilot. It's good for you. All right, here's throwdown. Let's go. It's throwdown time. I'm going to bring up a player I'm higher on than ECR, and the boys are going to tell me if I'm right or wrong. It's DPJ. Me and Mr. Jones have got a thing going on. Donovan Peoples-Jones has been pretty solid here these last few weeks. He's got a massive against Tampa this week. I understand there's a little bit of concern there. I get it. But I'm going to make a case here. I've got him at wide receiver 29. ECR is at 38. I love the consistency. Pat, am I a little bit too excited about DPJ with this matchup against the Bucs?
Maybe just a smidge, Joe. I am warming to DPJ. I mean, with at least 4 catches and 50 yards in 7 straight games, that is a sturdy floor. That is a nice Italian marble floor, Joe. But here's the thing. Like, David Njoku is back. That's going to put a little bit of target pressure on DPJ. I don't love the matchup this week either, with the Buccaneers having the very good outside cornerback duo of Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. So, I like him. I have Jones just above that tier we were talking about with Parris Campbell and Deontay Johnson and those guys. Like, he's a little higher than that. So I think he is in play as a flex guy or a wide receiver 3 this week. But I'm just kind of right around consensus on him.
See, Billy, I think after that splash game from Amari Cooper last week, everybody's going to be looking at him. Don't let Amari Cooper beat you, all this stuff. Pat's right. It's another week in, and Njoku came back last week, but you expect him to work a little bit more probably in the second week back than the first. What do you think about DPJ this week?
I'm with Pat on this one. I have him in that same tier. You do like to see the snaps, 94.2% of snaps the last 3 weeks, 98.7 last week alone. He has been sneaky good, wide receiver 33 or better since week 6 in PPR leagues. He saw 95% of routes participations last week, 91.85 in a 3-week trend. I do think Njoku eats into his targets. That being said, we're a week removed from having Watson back. So rest of the season, I think the outlook for DPJ is going to be improving this week in particular. I'm around ECR and not as thrilled as you are.
All right, there you go. Back to the drawing board for Joey P. Let's get to our listener mailbag straight from Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. Remember, I told you about fantasypros.com/offers. Again, you go premium, 6 free months, and the offers, you get access to all of our Discord, the AMAs, the stages, a whole lot more. This question is from Joe CHEN. So Joe Chen, I believe, at 1980. Would you drop DJ Moore for DPJ, Treylon Burks, or Parris Campbell? Funny, we've mentioned all 3 of those guys in this show. So, Billy, I'm going to press the guest here for a second. Would you drop DJ Moore with the returning triumphant Sam Darnold for any of these 3 wide receivers or all of them?
None of them. And it all breaks down to usage. And you look at his snaps, and I'm a big snap share component guy. You look at it, he has the most snaps of all wide receivers in the league, 96.6%. That was more than Cooper Kupp on his active games. That's more than Justin Jefferson.
It's a lot of cardio. That's what that is.
Yeah. 98% of snaps last week. Even though you don't particularly like what he's done this year, you have to think it's going to get better with Sam Darnold. And even if you don't think so, you still have to wait out and see because there is a change of guard and you never know what's going to happen. We've seen them be successful in the past together. So I'm holding on to DJ Moore over any of these guys.
Pat, same for you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not dropping DJ Moore now with Sam the Man Darnold back. Joe, in nine starts for Sam Darnold last year.
I knew this was coming.
In 9 Sam Darnold starts last year, DJ Moore had 53 catches, 677 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Prorated over a 17-game season, that works out to 100 catches for 1,279 yards. Now is not the time to drop DJ Moore.
There you go. Joe Chen, 1980. There's your answer. Stay the course. Gentlemen, fantastic to talk to you here about the wide receivers and all the ranks. Make sure you follow Billy Muzio over on the Twitter machine at FFMuzio, and make sure you check out his work at Full Time Fantasy. Billy, it was absolutely fantastic to have you here. I love the straight shooting, no hedge answers. I can't get enough. That is not something we get a lot of or enough of sometimes from our guests. So I love it. I appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and happy Thanksgiving to Pat Fitzmaurice and his family and all of your families out there as well. I am personally grateful for this Fantasy Pros community, and I know all of you are too. So I just want to say on behalf of all of us, we hope you enjoy the holiday, get a little break, enjoy some football, set all your lineups, and get it all done, and enjoy a little bit of a break from reality and have a little enjoyment of Thanksgiving and stuff your faces with pie. All the pie you could possibly get. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Billy and Pat, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at FantasyPros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.